Morning, guys. Dr. Ken Narberg here again. You know, I call myself that because it's my byline for magazine articles, more than 1,000 of them since I began writing for outdoor magazines, and actually more than 17 books, which I began in 32 years ago, all based on my unique hunting-related research all these years. Beginning back in the early 1960s. And one of my greatest rewards for all this writing are the letters I receive. And as you may or may not realize, I get a lot of letters. And most of them are really good letters. I mean, 99% are really nice letters. And I'm going to read you one I just received. I just received it this morning, just a little bit ago. And it starts out, my name, Doc. You know, I like being called Doc or Ken. Not Dr. Norberg or Mr. Norberg, but Doc or Ken. I like that. It's kind of a kinship kind of thing with whitetail hunters all over America and Canada. And I like that. You know, we're all part of the gang. It says, I received my almanac today and was moved to see that it was signed by you. This means a lot to me, as does your instruction over the years. 2018, I got my biggest buck yet here in Maine using your tips. At 9 points, 189 pounds. Tomorrow is my 50th birthday, and your signed almanac is a special gift. With my sincere gratitude, thank you. Shane. Isn't that nice? It's so nice. You know, that's what keeps me going. I keep thinking of all the guys that have written to me over the years, and I'm writing for them, for you and for others, or putting on seminars for you and others as well. And I want to, it's always been my desire to give you the best possible instruction for hunting whitetails, and to teach you all the kinds of whitetail lure that a lot of hunters have that don't know at all. You know, I want you to be well educated about whitetails. And this, of course, improves your whitetail hunting, especially buck hunting, a great deal. Well, there's a subject I need to cover. I've been talking about it, mentioning it a couple times, and I know you don't want to hear it, but I wish you would take time to listen to this, because it's really important. You know, a few weeks ago, people were concerned about all the motorcycle enthusiasts that were going to go to Sturgis, the annual get-together at Sturgis, South Dakota. And they figured that there would be maybe 250,000 of them there. And in the past, you know, it's been these guys have had a good time there, and it was thought that they, like people all over the country nowadays, they wouldn't be careful about avoiding becoming infected with the COVID-19 virus. And sure enough, they weren't being careful. They were having a good time. And sure enough, you know, people are keeping track of a good number of those people and where they ended up and where there's flare-ups going on of the coronavirus in our country. And like people were concerned about this, it caused a new spike to begin happening all across the country, every state in the United States. And a new spread of the virus. Guys coming home, they became infected there and came home, and now they're infecting their families and friends here at home. Well, that's nothing compared to deer hunting. This fall, as usual, there'll probably be 15 million deer hunters out there. And imagine, you know, that was 250,000 actually. us deer hunters will think, boy, what could be safer than being in the woods where we hunt deer? You know, there's no COVID-19 out there. We don't have to worry about that. And you know, I thought about this a lot. And I've done a lot of study, all kind. I've got a big pile of studies about COVID-19, and from what I've learned, I'm really kind of worried. You know, if you're hunting alone this year, you're driving alone, you know, or driving with somebody from the same household, like say father and son, and you're going to go out and hunt alone out in the woods somewhere, you're probably as safe as you can be. But a lot of us hunt in groups. Now, there's bunches as big as 3 dozen that get together every fall to make drives, like in Michigan. Some of those drives are called the Red Tide. All the hunters making a drive towards standards, that kind of thing. Big bunches. And I myself will have, it kind of depends, but we'll have 11 to 14 people in camp, in my deer camp this year. Now, I'm not trying to tell you what you got to do. The politicians and health people are doing that every day on TV, and I know you're sick of it. But I want to tell you what we're going to do in my deer camp, what my hunting partners are going to do this year to prevent becoming infected with the COVID-19 and bringing it home to our loved ones back home and starting that whole big cycle all over again wherever we live. This is what we're going to do. There are 4 places in my hunting camp where we're most likely to become infected if one of us is infected. Now, what you're saying, well, whoever's infected shouldn't go deer hunting, and that's true. That's the way we're thinking as well. But think about that a little bit. You know, think about yourself. You know, how many times have you gone to the grocery store and you see all kinds of people coming out and shoulder to shoulder, big bunches with no face masks on, not paying attention to that, and social distancing or staying 6 feet apart with one. You know, whenever I see that, I don't want to go in there. I buy my groceries on the internet and I pick it up outside. They have people in there bring it out to my pickup and they put it in there. They put it in there for me and I go home with it. I don't want to be inside there because the most dangerous place to be is in an enclosed place with one or more infected people for, say 3 hours or more, maybe less and maybe more, depending on the circumstances. You don't want to be in an enclosed place with somebody who's infected. Well, the problem with that is a lot of people who are infected don't know it. They don't have any appreciable symptoms. Oh, I got a headache, but I get headaches all the time, or, you know, something like that. And they don't know they're infected, yet they're dangerously contagious. And somebody comes, well, I had a headache, but that's nothing. That's not the coronavirus. They come to deer camp, and they are dangerously contagious when they do that. Well, that's one way it can happen. You know, you and everybody else in your hunting gang is close to people who are contagious every day, unless you stay home. You know, stay home and don't go anywhere. But if you're doing a shopping, unless you go to the auto parts store to buy a new airbag sensor or something like that, or whatever, or there's a lot of ways that you can become infected unknowingly, being among people who are contagious. Now, what we started out doing to kind of try to make sure that nobody comes to deer camp that's infected, we think in terms of being especially careful a month before we expect to arrive in deer camp, a whole month. And there's a reason for that. If you were in contact with somebody who's contagious in an enclosed place for any period of time, like a bar or a restaurant, you know, that's where it's happening nowadays. you may not come down with symptoms for as long as 14 days, but sometime between 2 and 14 days you're going to come down with symptoms. And if you're one of the few that have no symptoms at all, well, you may not realize that you're contagious when that finally happens. So there's a 14-day period there early in this month, that first half of the month, where you got to start being really careful about avoiding places where you're likely to be infected. You don't want to be there. I want to go deer hunting. I don't want to get sick and have to stay home because of it. That's what we're thinking, you know. And I don't want anybody else in my family to get it either. But anyway, so that first 14 days you're being extra careful, and let's say you get through the whole thing, no symptoms at all, and you think you're okay. Well, that might be, but maybe, say, sometime in that time, you came dangerously close to somebody who was contagious and spent some time there, close to them. So, but you won't know if you're going to come down with the disease, if or not, for the next 14 days. Then you're in the second half of this 1 month period before you go to deer camp. So you got to kind of quarantine yourself during that second half of the month before you go hunting. And hopefully you don't come down with any symptoms during that time. And if you do, you know, if you come down, you can't go. Maybe you can go later in the season, but if you got the symptoms, you're going to have to get over that disease, and your doctor's going to have to say, yeah, go ahead, you're safe. Then you can go. But if you come down with symptoms and you're still having symptoms up to the day that you expect to leave to go to deer camp, you shouldn't do that. You can't go. It's unfortunate that it happened. So you don't want that to happen. So so that's what that whole first month is about before you even go to deer camp. Then after that, you know. Now us 14 guys sleep in tents. We're tent camped. We hunt in deep wilderness areas, and we set up tents and live in tents for 2 weeks every year in the area where we hunt deer. And we love doing that, and we're good at it. You know, most people say, oh, I don't want to live in a tent. You know, well, listen, we're talking about hunting in northern Minnesota, close to the Canadian border. And we've had years where it was as cold as 23 below zero and 27 below zero. But remarkably, believe it or not, in our tents, you know, we got carpeting on the floor, and we got a nice big wood stove, barrel type wood stove providing heat. We can walk around in our bare feet when it's that cold outside and be perfectly comfortable in our tents. Sometimes we even got to unzip the door and cool it off because it's too warm in there. But so we have no problem with that. We're good at winter camping, and we prefer that. And so we've been sleeping in tents all these years. Now today we have 5 winter hardy tents that we sleep in. I just bought one. Got another one. It's a 12 by 12 tent. Our 2 biggest tents are 12 by 20 feet long. And you know, in one of those, there normally has been 6, 7, or 8 people sleeping in it at night. That many hunters in that one tent. We got a 12 by 12 tent. It's with higher side panels than the new 12 by 12 that I bought. The new 12 by 12, the side panels are only about a kitchen counter height. And then we got a 10 by 10. These are all winter hardy tents. They've proven themselves to be really good when you get a lot of snow, sticky snow, or cold weather, wind, the worst that winter can throw at us. We can be comfortable in those tents. The smaller tents are heated with propane heaters that are safe indoors. They have oxygen sensors, and if it gets too low, they turn off, and that kind of thing. Good, they're nice little heaters for smaller tents. No problem at all keeping those tents warm. Now, the reason I bought that 5th tent this year is because we have up to 14 guys coming to deer camp, like I said. Now, here's the deal, based on what I've learned. it would be okay for people who live in the same house, same household, to sleep together at night. It won't be any different than when they're at home. So like if there's a husband and wife and a son coming up deer hunting from the same household, those three can sleep in that tent. Now we'll have one group like that. We have another group that's similar. There's a husband, wife, and a son coming up, but the son lives in Colorado and works there. That's where he lives today. So he's not in the same household anymore. Furthermore, like me, who has added reasons for getting the disease and for the disease being fatal, you know, extra thing. I had a open heart surgery in 2016 and had to have my aortic valve replaced. So that makes me extra vulnerable. My grandson, he's got a little situation too where he has to be extra careful. For the two of us, and we're from different households, we have to sleep alone. We can't, I'm not going to sleep with anybody in deer camp. I'm going to sleep in my little 10 by 10 with a propane heater in it. Keep me nice and warm, no problem. I'm going to sleep in there alone. And I'm not going to sleep with anybody. You know, that's a danger. Look at 8 hours sleep in an enclosed space like a tent, or cabin, or shack in the woods, or RV, a slide-in camper on a pickup. Any of those enclosed places like that, well, if you're sleeping with somebody who's from another household, and you live at different places, shop at different places, and maybe you're different about how well you try to stay away from that, being infected. But that's the most dangerous thing you do in a deer camp, is sleeping together at night. And 8 hours with somebody that might be infected, boy, that's almost sure to make you infected. Maybe after 2 or 3 nights of that, boy, now you've got it. There's no way around it. So we aren't going to let that happen. There'll be maybe 3 of us sleeping in smaller tents heated with propane stoves. And there will be one of my sons and his son will maybe sleeping in one of the big 12 by 20s and so forth. But people from different households are going to sleep in different tents this year. That gets rid of the most dangerous thing this year. Now, another thing that's dangerous is getting together to have meals. You know, for many years we've been eating our own breakfasts and our own lunches in our own tents. You know, and these tents are separated. Some of them are several blocks apart. You know, they're different. Depending on where we got a flat spot where we can put a tent, there aren't many of those where we hunt, but so they're separated somewhat, and so they're all different in different places, and so when we get together to eat lunch, it's been almost every year people end up. Well, they'll eat breakfast in their own tent, some cold breakfast like cereal or something. We use cold because we don't want to get our hunting clothes all tainted with cooking odors when we go out there in the morning. The same way at lunch. Usually, sometimes we'll put some brocks on to boil or put them on charcoal outside to have for lunch. But generally, we'll eat a lot of cold lunches. And this year we'll be eating cold breakfasts and cold lunches in our own tents. But when it comes to dinner, you know, one of the best times in deer camps when we all get together in the evening and we always have a big meal. Oh man, barbecued ribs, steaks, spaghetti, a big dinner. And it's always fun to talk at the end of the day about what we've seen today and the buck we just got that morning or whatever. That's a fun time, and we'll have hors d'oeuvres made from venison usually in those evenings, and just happy camp stuff, telling jokes and playing cribbage and all that. Can't do it this year. Those big get-togethers are as dangerous, well, almost as dangerous as sleeping together. So this year, you know, and usually the way we do it, you know, one guy will bring their rib dinner, and another guy will bring chicken dinner for everybody in camp, and we get together, and so we trade off on that. And this year we're going to do, whoever's in charge of one of the evening meals, they'll come to my tent. That's the big cook tent this year. And they'll prepare it there and get it ready to serve. Now what we're going to do is set up the dinners cafeteria style, with all the food on one table in the big cook tent. And when it's ready to serve, then one at a time we'll be allowed to come in that tent. We'll all be wearing our face masks and plastic gloves when we come in. So whatever we touch in there, if we happen to be infected, we aren't going to be putting that COVID-19 virus all over in that cook tent. So we come in, we got plastic gloves, we've got that on, and we're social distancing. One at a time we'll come in, and we'll dish up whatever we want into takeout containers, like you get at a restaurant. Put whatever you want in there, and or maybe two, like one for dessert, and then you take them back. Everybody's going to take those back to their own tents to eat. They're going to eat in their own individual tents. And that way it'll be safe. And then afterwards, whoever's in charge will have to get everything sanitized again. They'll use wipes to cover, to go over handles of our cook stoves, and even the pulls on the zippers on their tent doors. We'll wipe those off with these wipes, and so we'll be doing that. And that will really, I think that will eliminate much of a chance of any of us coming down with the virus during meals. Now there's another dangerous time that we're going to be looking at. That's when we're dragging in a buck. You know, we don't use an ATV or snowmobile to bring in a deer, a buck, because we hunt older bucks. And we've made it absolutely obvious. Our older bucks really understand what the engine of a snowmobile or an ATV means. Especially they're out there in the woods in the morning, and here comes the motor. You know, they can hear it miles away, actually. Here it comes, and then it stops right over there. Now, there's not a buck in the woods that's 3.5 years of age or older that doesn't know what that means. That means there's going to be a hunter, human hunter, in the woods, on foot, very soon. The older bucks don't fall for that. Just like, you know, nowadays when you drive along a road, at least in Minnesota, and you see these deer in the ditch or in the field next to the road, and then you stop, boy, do they go. You know, because there's poaching going on yet today in that country. And at night, and they hear an engine coming. Well, I don't know if it's going to be safe here or not. And then it stops. No, let's get out of here. Especially older bucks. That's true of them. So we don't want that. We don't use ATVs or snowmobiles for anything in our day. We walk to our stand site for that reason. That does a lot to improve our chances to take older bucks. And what we're stuck with is using manpower like in the old days. We always did that. We'd get a bunch of guys together and make a dragging crew, and we'll drag the deer back to camp. And I've had some years up there where I was all alone and had to do it. It took me all day to get that deer to camp. Well, anyway, so now what's bad about that? Well, when you're dragging a buck, or any deer for that matter, you're going to be breathing hard. And if you're one of the guys that's infected, when you're breathing hard, you're going to be spewing, mask or not. Well, I shouldn't say that. But ordinarily, you're going to be spewing a lot of droplets from your lungs containing the virus. And all the guys in the dragging crew, there's a cloud of this that you're creating where you're going, breathing hard because you're wearing a mask. You got to wear a mask. You can't do this now. If you're not wearing a mask, it makes things much worse. You're much more likely to infect your buddies that are helping to drag that buck. So you got to wear a mask. So, but anyway, you're creating this cloud, and all these guys are walking through it. So what it means is that you're going to have to stop often to catch your breath because you got to wear the darn mask when you're dragging a buck. So it'll probably take 2 or 3 times longer to get that buck to camp because of that. But you gotta stop, catch your breath, maybe walk over there about 10 yards and take your mask off so you can catch your breath more quickly. So, and then finally everybody's got their breath, let's get all set and away we go again. Now, while you're dragging because of this, we're gonna have to keep social distancing going on. I mean, each guy in the dragging crew, and usually it take about 400 is enough to bring in the biggest buck, you know. When we get some 300-pounders, almost every year we'll get at least one. We want to be 6 or more feet apart. Okay, take a look at this now. You know, we use a big, heavy-duty plastic toboggan, really long one, to drag in a deer. It makes it much easier whether there's snow on the ground or not. Whether you're on a gravel trail or grass or whatever, it does make it a lot easier to drag in a big heavy deer. And well, our toboggan is shaped like something like that. And we have holes on it along the top here, and there's holes here, 1 or 2 in front for the drag rope. But the holes are there so we can lace that deer to the toboggan so he won't fall off, because you're always hitting bumps and going over logs and things. It's kind of a nuisance if it keeps coming off, and you got to keep getting it back on. So we lace them in there, and you know, there's antlers up here in front and nose. So and maybe the legs will be hanging out in the back, but that's all right, no problem there. So we have a toboggan like that, and we get 4 guys on it, pulling on the thing. Usually that's enough, like I said. And we use a long rope. You know, this end is attached to the toboggan, and on this end is a big loop, probably about 3 feet in diameter. And, you know, when you're using a rope like this guy is for the lead puller, and you want a big box of a guy there on that lead rope. And you step into the loop, and then you take the front of the loop and you put it behind your neck like that. And so it makes a harness, it goes under your arms and back that way. And you can lean into it, you know, put all kinds of brush, both hands free, you know, kind of keep the brush out of your face, and use a flashlight like in the dark, you know, to light your way. So, but you want a great big guy there on that front part. And then for the other 3, what I'm doing with this year is I'll have a rope in about every 8 feet, here, 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 and here. We'll put a loop on it, I'll grab a loop they can grab onto. And so we have loops on there, like that. And the loop makes it, and when you're dragging a deer in the woods, like this, you all want to be on one side. Because if you go around corner, when you go around corner, you're liable to get caught pressed up against a tree and stuck there. If you're all on one side, you can maneuver around along crooked trails more easily. This last guy, his job is to keep that buck's antlers from hooking up on tree trunks and logs over the trail and things like that, brush. So a lot of times he has to lift that front of that thing up to get those antlers clear as you're moving along. But each of these will be 8 feet apart instead of just 6 feet, because we're huffing and puffing. And so that's the way, that kind of rope is pretty long. You can see, you know, here's 8 feet here, that's 24 feet of rope right there, and plus a little here, and plus this amount here. So we're looking at a rope, we're looking at 35 foot long rope with these things tied in along the way for a drag rope. A little longer than we normally use. Yeah, you'll see some pictures of my gang dragging a deer on a toboggan like that, and you'll see how that works out, so it makes it clear. But when you have this kind of setup, it's not that big a problem to get a buck out of the woods, and you can do it with a fair amount of silence. you're not going to be alarming deer along the way. They'll hear you coming, oh sure, unless you're shouting and making all kinds of racket, yeah, which is unnecessary. Just do it quietly so that you aren't ruining that section of the woods by all the racket and things you might do that might alarm deer along the way. By doing it this way, you'll be able to hunt deer again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after, even though a shot was fired over there where the buck was taken. But you aren't ruining that woods for future hunting, you know, the days to come, being real quiet. But if you do it with a motor, you know, and it stops, and then you go and you continue to use the motor, come back the next day, it's not going to work. You got to do this fairly quietly. And so this is the way we do it because we're buck hunters. If you want to be a buck hunter, get used to it. Yeah, go to the gym, get strong, and do a lot of hiking so you can do this kind of work when you come to deer camp in the fall. That's important to your continuing success as a buck hunter. Okay, you got that part straight? Well, anyway, this is how we're going to keep from becoming infected when we're dragging in a buck. That's the way it's going to be done. So that's another dangerous area that that's well taken care of. Now, another one, you know, I talked about a little bit is, you know, don't carpool unless you're in the same, you know, come from the same household. When you're going to deer camp, you know, there's one time it's important. Yeah, you said, well, that's foolishness. I'm not sick, and my buddy here, that us two cousins always go together every year up there. No problem there. We're not sick. We don't have to carpool. This year, don't carpool unless you're from the same family. Just once, you know, put up with it. And it may be that you aren't sick and you never will be as far as deer camp is concerned, but there's that one little if. Somebody in your group, and the bigger it is, the more likely that one or more are going to become infected while they're up deer hunting. So just be careful about that. Eliminate that problem. Now, while you're on deer camp, while you're doing all these things, you should be wearing a mask and sanitizing your hands off, washing them, or use sanitizer on them often, or wear plastic gloves. You know, speaking of plastic gloves, I recently ordered 500 plastic gloves for deer camp, and they're like that, and they're little. I've had others that weren't as strong as these. They're pretty good. And especially when you're cooking food and serving food for others, that's good to wear. They're good to wear. And they're disposable. So I got 500 of these for deer camp. When you're around deer camp, you're wearing a mask, you're doing that, you're social distancing. I mean, you can get together, like if we have dinner, and get there early and sit around outside the tent if the weather's not real bad, and talk to one another, or maybe sit in our vehicles, roll down the windows, and talk to each other about the day's hunting, that kind of thing. Then when you get back to camp, you know, talk about it. But this year, it's always social distance. And then another thing we're going to do, everybody is going to bring a thermometer, a way to check their own temperature, body temperature. And we're going to do it daily. Anybody comes down with a fever, got to go home. We're not going to question what the fever was caused by, but it might be COVID-19. You got to go home. And you know what? If you're sleeping in a tent with others, like members of your own family, they got to go home too. Not just the person that comes down with the fever, because chances are they've been infected already. The thing about COVID, you might be infected, but you won't be contagious. And then all of a sudden one day you got a fever, and from that time on, you're really contagious. And if it happened during the night, you know, you wake up in the morning, you got to be, those people that slept with you in your tent might be infected too now. So at this point, to keep everybody else from becoming infected, time to break camp. You got to break camp and go home. That's it. Your season has ended right there. For your safety and for the rest of us as well. In fact, the rest of us, some of us might be thinking, oh geez, I wonder if I'm infected now too. And you might say, maybe I better go home too. Maybe the whole camp will go home then. That would be such a disaster. So this year, and let's hope it never has to be this way again, take such precautions. Will you please? I don't want it to happen to you. You're one of my gang. And you guys who are instructors for hunting, you may be working for the state, you're part of the Department of Natural Resources, and you put on hunting seminars, or you're teaching kids to get their firearm safety certificates early in the year. Advise them to watch this video, this YouTube presentation this year, would you? For their sake. I wish everybody in America could watch this and learn why COVID-19 could really become something awful happening in our deer camps every year. We don't want that to happen. If you do things carefully, the odds are very low that you're going to get the disease. Might happen anyway, but got to be careful this year. So let's do it, all of us this year. But like I said before, if you're hunting alone, or maybe you and your son, or you and your wife, and you go up and you hunt alone wherever you are, you can sleep in the same tent or the same camper or RV, it doesn't matter, and hunt in this woods. Once you're out in the woods, you know, unless you spend time really close to somebody that's infected, well, you're not likely to get that disease. It's not just going to be floating in the air in the woods out there and you're going to get it. No, that isn't going to happen at all. So, but let's be careful. Now the rest of us who are part of a gang, you know, it's our tradition to hunt in this area and go sleep. You know, like Saturday night in our camp, we'd go over to a resort, so about 10 miles away, on Saturday evenings. Have a dinner there, barbecue ribs, chicken dinner, that kind of stuff, fried chicken, and watch the Vikings play football. You know, if it happens to be on Saturday or other game, it doesn't matter. It's just fun to sit there and watch a football game and see what's happening to other teams. You know, you keep getting scores from others. So we go there and sit there and watch until the game's over and then go back to camp and go to sleep. That's traditional. That's part of the fun of being there, you know. Well, not this year. We're not going to go. That bar and restaurant, there's a bar, that's always loaded. Boy, come deer seeing it's loaded with guys in blaze orange, getting their clothes all tainted with the odors of that bar and the cooking food and all. We wear camp clothes. We don't wear our hunting clothes at all when we go there on Saturday night. So, but this year, no way are we going to roll a place like that during this deer season. Kind of sad, isn't it? But let's hope by this time next year we don't have to worry about it. Next year, forget about all this stuff. And one last thing, you know, we're going to sanitize our toilet with wipes after each use. Each guy uses we have 2 latrines in camp. We might even have a third one this year. And with wooden seats that we put over a hole in the ground. So we'll be sanitizing that wooden seat after every use. And then what we use will be right there next to the toilet, ready to use, so no problem with that. So, but I had to tell you this, and I've done my best to give you advice that will make your deer hunt safe this year. So take it or not, take my advice or not, that's up to you, but I wish you would. So with that now, guys, quit here, and from here on we'll be just talking about deer and deer hunting. But before you go, please hit the subscribe now button, and there's advantages to you and to me. It improves my odds of being around quite a while, giving you more of this. You know, you're probably amazed by all the YouTube presentations I made. Well, if you sat down and carefully listened to every one of those between now and deer season, that would use a huge part of your time. And I'm still at it, I'm still going, giving you new stuff all the time, and that's the way it's going to be. If you want to shorten the amount of time of learning the things that you like to learn, get my 10th edition of Whitetail Hunter's Almanac. You know, get that book. You know, you can spend a lot of money on stuff to go deer hunting this year, but this costs $35 plus postage. But that's a small amount of money you're going to spend on deer hunting compared to all the other stuff you're going to use this year. And you know that. Even a box of bullets can cost that much. So, and also, hit the thumbs up button, would you please? That's for me too. Do that favor for me before you sign off as well. And with that, thanks again, guys, and I'll see you soon. Be sure to visit my website. Here's the link. Here you'll find links to my blog posts, my Twitter account, my YouTube account, my Amazon store with links to my ebooks, my son's eBay store, a money saver if you're ordering from Canada or other countries, my website bookstore, and much more.